He's a cat dragon. Why did they make Smaug a cat dragon?
I have thoughts. I will save them for the end.
Dragonclaw, wing and scale. Come now, let's examine a tale of the greatest beast ever considered. Another episode of Big Flying Lizards.
Pretty broad question to start off today, Bryce.
Hit me with it.
Do you have an all-time favorite novel?
Ooh, that's tricky because I just have to be in the certain mood for it.
You can rattle off a few if it's not just one.
Here's the thing. Like, I love A Way of Kings, which I know you recently completed it.
Sanderson.
Brandon Sanderson. I personally love all the books in A Song of Ice and Fire that are out right now, the 5 of them.
I think that's all we're going to get. So you could just say A Song of Ice and Fire.
Hey, it's coming. I believe it. I believe it's coming. And then I'm always going to have a love for the Inheritance Cycle. But I just have to refer to the GOAT. Like the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, especially the Two Towers. The Two Towers may be like one of my all-time favorite books. Just
a book, because I know that's your preferred, the Jackson films.
Well, I love the movie because of how much I love the book. Like, the book was one of my favorite. Like, Rohan is like, they're my boys. Yes.
Catch it on Bryce's workout playlist.
Some remixes going in with some bass in there. But I'd have to say, like, if I'm going just of all time, and especially of how many times I've read / listened to it, my final answer would be Two Towers.
It's a good pick. I also don't feel like it's too much of a cheat just to say Lord of the Rings, because Tolkien viewed that quote-unquote trilogy as one book. Just one super book.
One could make the argument that all 7 books of Harry Potter is just one.
I don't know about all that. But I bring it up because I think it's important context getting into today's episode that I let the audience know that The Hobbit is probably my favorite book of all time.
Okay, break it down for me.
It's seminal. So I do think it's one of those that's just sort of hard to argue with. It lays the foundation for hundreds or thousands of fantasy adventure works to come.
Yeah.
So it's got that backing. Also, I will say, like, I am a movie guy. I dabble in some of the shows here and there, and I do love to read. It's just it's not as much of a priority to me. So
for sure,
I don't want to put like as much weight on my opinions there, but The Hobbit is a work that I have revisited over the years and always found really rewarding. And it is a book that my father and I connected over.
Yeah.
Which, not to get too personal on this, but throughout the years, like, media and stories are quite decidedly the most like reliable way I've been able to connect with my father. So some of my fondest memories from childhood with him are him reading stories to me, and The Hobbit is like top of the heap there. Just like every turn that book took, because I was familiar with Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, this is more Lord of the Rings than my dad's bringing today.
This is the DLC.
Yeah. So I'm a little worried, because I think we had a really good discussion last week on Aragon, where I was like, just ignore the source material. Let it be what it's going to be. And now I'm worried that I'm going to display some hypocrisy because we're talking about an adaptation of a work that is so important to me in my life. And I just want to get ahead of that a little bit before we dive in.
Hey, I won't be calling you out. I can't make any promises in the comments section.
All right.
Well, welcome to Big Flying Lizards, a dragon movie and television podcast. I am one of your hosts, Bryce Wilson.
Your hopes?
My hopes? You're one of your hopes. I am one of your hopes and dreams, Bryce Wilson. I am one of your hosts, Bryce Wilson. Joined across the table from me is co-host and one of my dearest friend, Austin Snyder. Austin, how are we doing today?
Great. Today is an early morning record.
First one. That's a notable first, isn't it?
Yeah, we are making a little Big Liz history with that fact. I think it's more notable that this is the first piece of animation that we're covering on the podcast.
There's a lot of firsts in this episode.
This is a huge episode, everybody. Buckle up.
We're here. We've got a lot of firsts. The sun is up, it is shining, birds are singing.
Yeah, we just don't have to worry about the caffeine intake. Go hit the gym after.
Cheers to that.
We can't. You can't cheers on a podcast because then everybody takes a drink at the same time.
They can drink whatever they want.
No, I mean the two of us. That's just a little dead space.
Hey,
but
fair.
Today we are talking about The Hobbit.
Yes.
The 1977 animated adaptation.
We are talking about The Hobbit from as you said, 1977. It was directed by both Arthur Rackins Jr. and Jules Bass. It has the composer of the music, which I know we're going to be talking quite a bit about, is Mari Laws. And I didn't necessarily know this before. I mean, I know it was said and stated, but it was a TV special rather than a theatrical release.
Right.
And I think it was pretty positively accepted. I mean, it's now at least positively accepted. I'll be perfectly honest. I watched the film. I didn't do too much background noise, so I'm going to be like, I think it was great.
See, that's the issue because we have so much quality content that's just getting like plopped on Netflix, like direct to our homes, that I think the home viewing standard has gone up a great deal in the nearly 50 years since this film's release.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm pretty mixed on it, but if you take it and grade it against the standard of the time, like a television special directly, pretty good. They got something going here.
And even just right off the bat, I know it's the very almost like early Disney like drawing animation style where like the backgrounds are just the stills essentially. I loved it was.
Well, we kind of grew up on that. I think we have a bit of a tolerance that maybe some of our younger listeners might not have built up over years of watching
Scooby-Doo.
I say Scooby-Doo, like Land Before Time in my case, or various religious low budget programming.
Living Scripture.
There we go.
And then the early Disney films. Like again, I was very much getting the vibes of like Sleeping Beauty and Snow White.
It's not up to that standard.
It's not up to that standard, but it's still that style of like fantasy background where it's a lot of the forest. And we'll eventually get to it, but when we're actually seeing inside the Dwarves city, like I loved it. Like I loved just seeing like.
And off the bat, that's something that I will credit them with, that the background painting and the scene design in general is pretty quality.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but it's beyond what you would expect of a production of this size from this era.
Yeah.
So I'll give them that. The animation overall is a little stilted. It's a little like tiny bit of movement. All of the characters in the background are perfectly still. They deliver a line. It's not the highest quality thing you're gonna catch.
No, I get it, but I also. I can see I see the budget because again, they have actually, I don't think I said the budget for it was $3 million.
Now that's $1977,
which is $1 trillion. but still, like, I don't feel like it's no Game of Thrones budget over here by any stretch.
Absolutely not. No.
And again, I feel bad because I'm not as familiar with voice actors back then, but did they get, like, I felt like everybody did a solid job. I don't know what everybody else's credits are for everybody else in the film.
I'm down to I think the voice cast overall is pretty good.
Mhm.
I don't think that they're given a lot of opportunity to do much with the characters for how breakneck the pace of this thing is.
Yes.
But I'm down if you are to dig into the characters and their performances more as we reach them
For sure.
in the synopsis.
No, I agree.
One piece of housekeeping I would like to propose
Yes.
up top here, before we dive into any of that, though,
Let's hear it.
is we talked before that we wanted to be very deliberate in not making this a discussion of the works of one Peter Jackson.
Mr. Jackson.
Today we are here to talk about the 1977 film, which existed well before that was even conceived, the Lord of the Rings Hobbit live action adaptations. So we would really love to keep the discussion today more centered on the original text and how it was adapted in this 1977 film.
Yes.
Now, I think that is going to be extremely difficult.
I will say this. I will not focus conversation, but there are a couple aspects. Like, I'll just get this right off the bat so we don't dive into it. I low-key love the songs that they kept. There was a few songs that Peter Jackson kept that he seemed to take almost direct inspiration from.
Well, the songs are in the book.
Well,
Those
they are
from
in the book,
Tolkien, the
but like the
lyrics.
tone, like the how they were performed. Like, if you listen to like the Misty Mountains and you play them by each other, like, you can tell that Peter Jackson, like, yes, it's the same lyrics and it's going to be that way, but like, it's not like there were notes associated with the song. It's
fair. And I think it's interesting to note one of the things I actually do want to dig in on are the instances where in adapting the same material, they more or less came to the same conclusion.
yes,
Because I don't know if it's so much that Jackson saw this movie and then was like, well, I need to make the live action version of that. I think it's both of them pulling from the same source text and leading to similar results. Although Jackson has said that the 78 Lord of the Rings was a minor inspiration. So I have to assume he'd at least seen this film.
the only pushback I'd provide, I agree, and I do think that there's a lot to that. However, the Dwarven city almost looks like he took that and made it live action. And there's nowhere near as much detail talking about the Dwarven city in the book, like getting to that point.
That's that one. Absolutely. I'm like, this is just what he did in Desolation of Smaug. And then Hobbiton.
Yes.
Like, Hobbiton is, and there, Tolkien really goes in. Like, there is a lot of description of Hobbiton in the books.
Yes.
So that could just be similar, reaching similar conclusions, but it's a strikingly similar rendition in both cases.
Yes. But again, those are things that I'm okay with. Like, I have no problem being
No, and I think that's worthwhile discussion. But what I'm going to propose,
okay, let's hear.
is that we try and keep our total references to the works of Peter Jackson at or below the lucky number of 14.
14.
Do you think that is doable?
I will make a tally mark.
That's
each
what I said. I
time.
mean, this is definitely one, maybe two, if you, because I think I brought
Well,
them
the
up.
rule hasn't been implemented yet.
Okay. We'll count everything up to this point as one single reference.
Okay.
I can keep the tallies here if you'd prefer.
Okay.
And we have 13 to go. And
That's
and if
lucky
you
number.
hear just random pieces of this podcast all muffled out, kind of sounding like this, then that's because we went over budget. I'm holding this. What, are you down?
I'm down.
I think that is a reasonable goal for us to aim for.
Austin, I'm even going to push it a little further. If we get to 17 past, the podcast ends.
It just ends. So every reference passage is like, warning.
You are 2 away. You are 1 away. And then it gets the death penalty.
Okay. So if the podcast ends, you know why. You know.
It's because of Peter Jackson.
That's two. Careful, buddy. Careful. We don't have those to burn. Okay. Do you want to get into the movie though?
Yeah. Again, sort of, it's a nostalgia thing. I love when animated films open up with a book.
I do too. Not just because that's in live action films too.
It is, but I think it's something especially special for animated. Like, I love it in live action, but with the animation, like, because I know they didn't do it with this one, but I've seen films where it's a real book and then you go into an animated film. And I'm a real sucker for that. Not that was what's going on, but I still love because it has the amazing like penmanship. It has like the drawings, and I'm pretty sure the entire prologue is taken right out of The Hobbit.
Yeah. I mean, this is a overall pretty faithful adaptation. They make a lot of cuts.
They have to,
but basically no additions.
Yes,
and a lot of the dialogue is straight from the book.
And I just want to point out, Austin, I have a lot less complaints about this movie versus a movie that we talked about last week.
As far as adaptation goes?
About film in general. So a particular conversation about staying loyal to the source material might be...
We'll address each element as we get there.
Perfect.
But the film, past the storybook, opens with our dear Bilbo. Finding his largest pipe and taking a fat rip.
I mean, I've seen guys in college that
I'm just saying, maybe a signal to any adult viewers. Starting this thing off.
I do also love the fact that he's just... He has the pipe and he's smoking on his front porch, and all of a sudden there's a flash of light and Gandalf is there and he's like, whoa.
Yeah, so who knows? Maybe it's all a hallucination. This is an anti-drug. Stay away, kids. You're going to end up going on this really annoying adventure.
Or it's a pro-drug. Like, hey, if you smoke, you can go into adventures too. Create your own adventure. Don't do drugs. Drugs are bad, okay? Okay. So The Hobbit.
So Gandalf shows up and he gives the whole like, I am Gandalf. Gandalf is me.
Yeah, the whole speech.
Yeah. Well, it's an abridged version of the speech.
Yes. And so one thing, again, I understand how much time, but the pacing of this movie is sometimes just so, because it literally feels like Gandalf is talking, then all of a sudden the dwarves just start appearing out of it.
This movie's 77 minutes long.
Yeah.
And to burn a reference here, get this one out of the way, that is too fast. A lot of people complain that the Jackson trilogy took, so much source material and stretched it. I do not agree with that take at all. I think the overall issue with those films is not that they stretched them out or that they wanted to cover a lot of like little details. It's just that everything they added on top of the Tolkien source material is garbage.
I do, like, I'll say this, since we're already on this book.
Yeah, this is on the same one.
They could have gotten away with just doing 2. I know it was in the era of trilogies, like everybody was doing a trilogy at that point in time, but they could have gotten away with just doing 2.
Well, but you still agree with me, I take it then, that 2 of those movies, that's still 5 hours?
Yeah.
That's a more appropriate runtime for an adaptation of this material.
Oh, for sure.
Than 77 minutes.
Like, I was even confused when they were all introducing themselves. I'm like, which one's Thorin? Like,
Yeah, so Gandalf shows up and he's like, "You're a burglar now, you're coming with me." And Bilbo's like, "What?"
what?
What, a burglar? And Gandalf convinces him by saying it's more of an expert treasure hunter.
Yes.
And he's like, "Oh, okay, that sounds fun." And then all of the dwarves show up at once,
Which popped out of the snow like daisies.
Yeah. And I get why they did this. This is something that you can stand to cut if you have that restriction. But it is a big part of the books where like they come in ones and twos, and you sort of get to know each dwarf individually. We're not bothering with any of that. In fact, I have some information here.
Yes, let's hear it.
That sorry, I don't have an actual printout, so my notes are a little more difficult to comb through. But 14 dwarves. Well, no, 13 dwarves, and Bilbo makes 14.
The lucky number.
This is absurd. I mean, you thought Snow White was excessive. And in fact, like, I'm just imagining the animation department being like, why do we have to have so many of these characters when in fact only the following have any lines in the film? So again, 13 of them, and those who have lines are Thorin, Balin, Dori, Bomber, and Dwalin. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Less than half of them.
Well, to be fair, in damn it, in the Peter Jackson film,
Jeez, okay. That's 20 minutes in.
we're at 4, 10 more.
Yeah, okay.
But most of them don't have like more than like 5 lines in the Peter. Like,
But they have the moments where they show up and you get a sense of the character. I mean, there's at the end where they kind of fast track the last like 5 or something.
yeah.
But you do get more of a sense of character, especially for like Thorin. And who's the first that shows up?
Dwalin, at your service.
It's the yoked one.
Yeah. Anyway, but that first guy when he's just like eating all the food, and we're not even concerning ourselves with that. And overall, I think the character development in this film is abysmal.
Yes.
As far as the dwarves, it is basically non-existent. I think that it is one of the greatest tragedies of this adaptation, and the one of the omissions that hurts it the most, that they just don't have the time to dedicate to the character of Thorin.
Yes.
And his whole story is basically throughout the runtime of the film fast-tracked into 90 seconds.
Yes. I mean, we don't even touch on the fact that like the two dwarves are Thorin's like nephews. Like that's like
No. I also find it kind of funny how as far as the dwarves go, the main one is Thorin, and in this film, Bomber is like the number 2. You know what I'm saying?
It seems like in each adaptation, like there's a different one that's like, I say each, but there's 2. But like, cause it's the old one, even though Thorin's technically the oldest.
Is that
Balin, at your service.
Yeah, I don't know if that's just them like well, Bomber's the fat one, so kids are gonna be able to track who that character is.
Bomber's fun.
He's kind of a nothing character in this.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying I think he has the most lines of any dwarf behind Thorin, which is an odd choice.
Yes.
Also, they decide to kill him at the end, which doesn't happen in the book.
Let's just jump to that. They kill off like how many of the dwarfs at the end of the movie?
Like half of them, I swear.
When only 3 of them die, including Thorin at the
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. If they just wanted to make it more dramatic. I do kind of appreciate that this is a darker children's film.
Oh, for sure. Like I'm excited to talk about Gollum. I'll just say that. Like,
Oh yeah. That's where this thing really sings. But we're not there yet.
no, we're not. We're breaking the plates, bending the forks, because
Right.
that's what Bilbo Baggins hates.
Yep. And we kind of fast track that one, but that's 2 songs already from
Bangers.
the Tolkien text. We have the Dwarven song,
The
Far
Misty
Over the Misty Mountains Cold, to Caverns Deep, and to Dungeons Deep and Caverns Off. But that sort of starts playing over the introduction of the dwarves, and then they move to the plates, and they're making a big mess, and old Bilbo doesn't like that. It's sort of rattling his jimmies. And then they sing the dwarven song again in the context that it appears in the text.
And then the dwarves start telling like what happened, like essentially how.
Right, they sing the whole song, and then they're like, "Okay, Bilbo, are you ready to come on the adventure?" And he's like, "I guess." And like, "Do you know what we're doing?" And he's like, "No." And I just imagine Thorin like, "We just sang the song."
Did you not hear the diss track? Everything's in the song, Bilbo. But I want to point out at 6:16 of the film, we get our first sighting of Smaug.
Sure do.
And he's just flying around.
It's more of a shadow.
Well, no, we actually see him because it's the shot of the Misty Mountain, the Lonely Mountain, and Smaug flies behind it. It's a really small shot of him, but we still get
A little glimpse, a little foreshadowing.
And I also really love the animation of the fire. Like, I've never really seen that particular style of.
Yeah, and there's a retro charm to certain aspects. I think that their depictions of like magic are kind of fun, if not good.
Yeah.
The fire's neat though. It
like
has that
skinny.
70s flair that I responded to it as well.
And
I feel like we should outline what the quest is, though.
Yes.
I mean, if you don't know about the Hobbit, then
Stop the pod.
I really wonder how you got here. But we got you. All are welcome.
So a dragon took the dwarven city in the Lonely Mountain. Did they ever actually say the name of the city in the movie? I don't think they actually do.
Not that I recall. It doesn't matter.
It's the Lonely Mountain.
The Lonely Mountain, yeah.
And so Smaug took it over and took all the gold that's within it. And the dwarves are setting out to go kill the dragon to take back their home.
Yeah, and Thorin is like the heir to that kingdom.
Yes, his grandfather was the king who was killed when Smaug attacked.
So they're going off, all 14 of them, lucky number 14, to reclaim their treasure from the dragon.
Yes. And it's such a small scene, but I still just love when like Bilbo's going over the contract. He's like, funeral arrangements.
Yeah, so let's talk about Orson Bean as Bilbo. Because I watched this film twice, actually, in preparation for the podcast. It's a little easier when it's this tight a runtime.
Yeah.
The first time, I low-key hated what he was doing. The second time, I got a little bit more used to it, but he is a bit, like, he's just such a fuddy-duddy.
Yes. But the thing is, Bilbo is a little bit of a fuddy-duddy for the first half. Like, I wish he would have matured more further into the film rather than been like, you're absolutely right, Thorin. I don't understand war at all.
You're right, Thorin.
But
and it's a lot of that over enunciation, which is probably a good idea for children's programming. But
yeah,
it's the whole. My name's Bilbo, and I'm going on an adventure.
Yes,
and I don't know. It gets a little tiresome.
It does, but
he doesn't do a bad job.
I enjoy it. Like, I'm not going to say that it's bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I do get where you're coming from, where there's a couple moments in the movie where I'm like, okay, this is old. Like, again, we'll talk about it more in depth, but the spider scene, I'm just like.
and another part of it is I feel like his delivery of each line is more or less the same.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if it's him making a great character revelation. He's talking to Smaug. He's talking to Bilbo. He's talking to himself. It's more or less the same delivery, and not my favorite aspect of the film. But they get a move on.
They get a move on.
And Bilbo's already to complaining.
I low-key love it because it's literally not even like 2 minutes after. Like I think it's like 10 seconds after they started traveling. And Bilbo's like, I forgot my handkerchief. Why does it have to be raining? I hate this.
And Gandalf tells him to think of pleasant things. So Bilbo then offers up a comprehensive list. Do you recall?
Do you have the list here?
I do.
Let's hear the list.
Bilbo's comprehensive list of quote-unquote pleasant things. Eggs and bacon, a good full pipe, my garden at twilight, cakes.
I don't hear anything wrong with that list.
I mean, that's most of it for me. So I can relate to Bilbo on that.
I mean, who doesn't want bacon? Just like...
Nice crispy bacon. Oh, no!
Oh, we're at 6. We're almost halfway.
Nice crispy bacon, Mr. Frodo.
But one of the most classic moments, obviously it's not the most classic moment, but I still think it's an iconic classic moment, is the troll moment.
And this is something I kind of come up against a lot in this film, where the core story that they're telling is such a banger. They're working with such golden source material that I can't help but kind of love it. But I don't necessarily love the execution in most cases.
I just wish that because the trolls capture Bilbo because Bilbo is over there trying to steal some mutton. Because that's what the dwarves send him off to do.
Yeah, because Bilbo is the burglar.
Yes.
Which they don't outline specific roles for any of the other dwarves, and in fact, I don't think they do anything the entire film. None of them.
I was thinking that the entire film, and again, not to jump to the end, but when they're like, Bilbo was like, I have not seen any of you do anything.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is like the most like self-aware moment of this production. But I also like Gandalf just vanished. Like, I know he vanishes in the book, but he always gives some sort of like vague reason for vanishing. They're just like, oh, Gandalf's gone.
Peace out. Good luck.
I've got to go take a smoke break. I'll be right back.
Wizard business. Okay, but this is the classic first like encounter, first real bit of proper adventuring that Bilbo and company run into, where there's a group of trolls.
Yep.
3 trolls around a campfire.
Yep. And
Thorin asks Bilbo to go and burgle some of their supplies.
Yeah, get some mutton.
Now, how do you feel about the character/creature design on the trolls?
I don't think it's horrible. I think
they're all nose for some reason. And I don't know what that's about. They're also like Caucasian skin tone, which is a choice. I like the one has like the kind of tusks and is missing an eye. That's pretty gnarly.
If I were to redesign it, I would almost switch the looks of the goblins with the trolls, and then the trolls look more like the goblins, because I think...
Well, I don't necessarily love the goblin design either. Do you know what the goblins remind me of? The Mucinex monster. They're like stout and fat, and they got the big mouths.
Yep.
And I recognize that you can only go so scary in a children's program, but it's an odd stylistic choice. It's not necessarily what I would have pictured in my mind.
I feel like they look like the Mucinex monster mixed with like a pug or something like
that. Yeah. There are other examples of creature design that I like in this film, but those two I'm mixed to negative on.
I personally like the goblins. The trolls, I'm indifferent I'll just say that.
Okay.
But Bilbo gets captured and sort of accidentally outs the rest of his group, just being like, "Run, Thorin!"
And then the voice acting of the trolls is quite good.
Oh,
they
yes.
have that deep voice, and they're like, I don't want to eat mutton anymore. I'm not doing a good job. It's good.
It's good.
They have very trolly voices.
The one thing I will say that was my biggest critique of the scene is I wish, because what happens is they're talking about cooking them up or smashing them or like what they do in the book. But then Gandalf appears and brings the sun with him, essentially, rather than in the books. Gandalf is like playing tricks on them, making them argue with themselves all through the night.
Yeah, but so I see what you're getting at too, because it's not necessarily a bad impulse for them to sort of fast track that.
Yeah.
That Gandalf just shows up and turns them into stone, because this movie does not have the time.
Yeah.
But they half commit to it where they're still quote unquote arguing about how they're going to do, but then they just settle it because the one troll is like, I assume the smart troll, he's like, yeah, but we got 14 of them, so you can take yours, you take yours, and I like mine raw, so let's get busy. And it sort of deflates. Like, they didn't commit to that adjustment.
I feel like what they could have done, and hear me out, like they could have been like having that argument, and then it could be like some of the classical like time is passing music, and they could just be still having that same conversation. Like they don't even need to have like the Gandalf
appearance at all, or near the end.
Well, they could just be like
What do you propose?
I propose that if I was in the director's seat, it would add probably 2 minutes more to the movie on this. But they're doing that, and there'd be like a bush that'd be shaking and be like, why don't we put it like steak them and slow roast them? And it's clearly a troll voice, but we see like the tip of Gandalf's hat like out of it.
Sure, something like that.
And then it would be like the time is passing and it's still happening, and then the sun would set, and then Gandalf like brushes himself out, comes out of the bushes, and like
this is just going to be the first of many instances where the breakneck pace of this film loses all nuance and then just feels a little sudden and unearned.
Yeah,
but not the very worst example of that.
No. I also want to point out Bilbo was captured initially, and then they sort of just toss him aside.
yeah. They're just they make some comment because he yells to the dwarves, and they're like, "Oh, dwarves taste way better than hobbits. Let's go!"
And he goes and explores the troll cave.
Yeah. I do have some comments on the trolls, though, because I think this is the appropriate time for me to make mention of the Hobbit video game from the 2000s. Did you have the opportunity to play this game as a child?
I never actually got to play it myself, but I think I watched you play it.
Oh, okay, over at the Snyder household.
At the Snyder house. Yeah. It was a fun game. From what
it was fun enough, and again, as a Hobbit fan, I loved it just for the fact that it was Lord of the Rings. Looking back on it now, it is not especially well rendered and pretty overtly a Zelda ripoff. And so I look back, and the fact that I didn't play Zelda as a kid, but I was playing The Hobbit on GameCube is pretty silly. One aspect to that game that is a little different, that probably the most singular element to that game, is that it does have a fair bit of sneaking to it.
Yeah.
And so there will be a lot of levels where you kind of have to find the certain path to where you won't alert the enemies. And then this one is actually a little harder than those later in the game because you don't have the ring yet.
Yeah.
But it's always bothered me so much that this particular level where you have to sneak up on the trolls, and the way it's laid out is there are all these like crunchy leaves. Right. So you can't step on the crunchy leaves or you're going to alert the trolls.
Yeah.
And if you do that, if you alert the trolls, then they capture you and presumably eat you. So you have to restart the level. But then when you complete the level, you get up and you try to take his pocketbook, and then it alerts the trolls, and the story progresses as we all know it does. And I'm like, how is this different than quote unquote failing the level?
Just to be open and honest about to the audience here, Austin has been having this gripe for the past 15 years.
And it's not like it's important to me that this game be revered as this masterpiece. It's not. But what were they thinking?
Austin, you were just having your first exposure to Assassin's Creed. Like,
you had to get caught in the right way.
Well, maybe the idea is the dwarves were too far away to help you at that point in time.
I don't know. That's probably the last I'll mention the video game. It is not worth revisiting.
Fair.
Oh, but then, so the sun comes out and the trolls turn to stone because we learned that all of the baddies in this universe function like Minecraft mobs.
Yes.
The sun's up, they're done for.
Well, that's in the literature. Like Tolkien, like very much has said that trolls particularly turn to stone when sunlight touches them, and goblins and orcs hate sunlight. They just naturally like. That's why we're talking about the Hobbit, not Lord of the Rings, but that's why the Uruk-hai were such a big deal, because they were like.
They had the daylight resistance.
They had the daylight resistance. They could go out in sun and not be bothered by it. And
you're right. I'm just making it funny.
No, I'm laughing with you funny.
But then they go over to plunder their hoard.
They find a lot of elven shit, but they don't know it's elven.
No, not yet. And Bilbo gets his iconic sword, Sting, which not my favorite representation of Sting, but maybe a more fitting depiction of a sword with that name.
Yeah,
it's tiny.
It looks like an ice pick. Like even when it's in Bilbo's hand, like it looks like an ice pick.
Yeah, it's like that little thing that Aemond wanted Luke to gouge his eye out with in season 1, episode 10 of House of the Dragon.
Thorin, I want you to take out your eye.
Bilbo, what's come over you?
But after that, they start making their way to Rivendell. And I don't know if you picked up, like when I was watching this scene to begin with, it seemed like they were just going to skip over Rivendell. Like
they almost could have.
But like with what Gandalf was saying, like it really sounded like they're like, that's Rivendell right there. And we can't, it's almost like in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where they're like, it's Camelot.
A silly place.
And then, that's the conversation I thought that they were having. Like, I literally thought that Gandalf was like, we do not have time to stop there. But then they end up going there anyways. And maybe I just misinterpreted what I'm sure I did. But like when I was watching, I'm like, oh, that's weird. But okay.
So they get to Rivendell because they have to have Elrond read the map. So they can't skip this part.
Yes.
I guess they probably could have just had Gandalf read it, but it's fine. There's some quote-unquote elf music in the background, which is oddly reminiscent of music of the era in which this film was made. And then we see who is supposed to be Elrond, but
he has a beard.
Yeah, that's looking a lot more like David Bowie to me. That's not Elrond. That's Bowie-esque space adventure man.
And I know it seems like, just to be open and honest, elves are like my least favorite fantasy race. I'm sure it's not going to be the first. It's not going to be I genuinely do not like elves. I feel like they're the race that are like, we're the most powerful, wise race of them all. Are we going to do anything to help you? No! Figure it out yourself!
Well, on the contrary, this elf is very helpful.
He is very helpful.
The party.
Yes, he is very helpful to the party. But also, like, just like last week where Arya didn't have pointy ears, elves are not supposed to have facial hair. Like, that's like...
Oh, yeah, now that you mention that is pretty odd.
Like, in the books, they always talk about that they're always clean shaven with not a single hair on their face. And Elrond over here has this, like, not as big of a beard as Gandalf, but still, like, a grand beard.
Yeah. It's a good looking character. I actually like this character design.
It looks good, but the nerd accuracy in me is just like, cut it out. Stop that.
He also has a fun kind of like sparkly halo around his head just at all times for some reason. I don't know what that's about, but I'm not questioning it.
The elves have some interesting headpieces in this adaptation.
They sure do. Yeah, because they're two very different depictions of elves.
Yes. The high elves and the wood elves have a clear difference in design.
It's alcoholism.
Alcoholism and meth.
Could have just, we'll be there soon enough. But Elrond reads their magic map. He's like, okay, there's a secret door on the Lonely Mountain that you're going to be able to access by the last light of Durin's Day.
He's like, you have to check if this is an authenticated map here for, oh, would you look at that? The moonlight.
Yeah, he finds the lemon juice message on the back of the Declaration of Independence.
He didn't even have to put it in an oven.
No, just the light of the moon. Or I think they gloss over because it's supposed to be like, that's just a tremendous coincidence in the book that they're like, you can only read this once every 1,000 days, and that just so happens to be tonight.
Like, that's really lucky.
But then we're moving on.
Yes.
From Rivendell.
And again, I know why they cut it out, but I feel like them cutting out the giants in the mountains was just...
That's one where you feel like there's a real opportunity to do something with animating that sequence.
Yeah. And it could have taken 7 seconds. Like, it didn't have to take that long. It could have been like them like still going up and it's storming, and you could just see the giants like throwing rocks or anything like that. And they're like, we need to find shelter.
But instead, they just dug into a mountain and
they're all turning into Bilbo, like, oh, the raid.
That's a funny thing, though, because all of the dwarves are portrayed as super old with long white beards.
They're either all super old or clearly like 12-year-old version.
Feely and Keely look like freaking the trolley. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. But the bulk of them are just like such old fuddy-duddies.
Yeah.
I know I already said that, but that's such an odd choice to have this entire company read as 60 plus for a children's animated TV special.
But they all, not only that, they all look like Grumpy the dwarf, but like,
yes,
100 years older.
Yeah, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
They also reuse the animation or the character design for some dwarves to look like each other, which I didn't love, but again, I understand. It's like they just need to fill out 14 characters, even though 5 of them need to speak.
They only had a $3 million budget, Austin, after.
Yes, but also you should bear in mind that the production of this film was outsourced to Japan. So aside from the inhumanity that may have gone into the production of this film, I have a feeling they were able to stretch those dollars much further than old Walt might have been able to do here in the States.
What are you talking about, Austin? Japan has no record of misusing their animators in any way, shape, or form.
On the contrary, the credited animation coordinator on this is Toru Hara, who has producer credit on many a Ghibli film. He's credited as a producer on Nausicaa, Totoro, Castle in the Sky, Kiki's Delivery. And I hate to break this to anyone who's maintained this illusion, but Miyazaki is recognized as like one of the most difficult directors to work under, maybe of all time.
But does he miss?
No, I appreciate the results. I just wish that they would recognize that these movies should cost $1 billion.
When you have a totalitarian leader at the head who runs a tight ship, the ship stays clean, Austin.
Anyway, so Japanese animation, It looks better than a $3 million budget. That's all we're really getting at here. And you do see some Japanese influence in the character design, the animation style.
I especially think you see it in the Wood Elves. Like, I feel like the Wood Elves are like the most anime-esque looking, like, character design characters.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Where are we in the plot?
Bilbo falls asleep.
And they reuse the animation from earlier with the song, "That's what Bilbo Baggins," so they can pad out their runtime.
And
the old trick.
He wakes up to a door opening.
Yes.
And this was like one of them that was, and I've noticed differences, but this was like a clear difference that I noticed because the goblins just take the horses. Like they don't, they ignore everybody else and they just take the horses, which is not what happens in the books at all because the goblins attack in the books.
Yeah. So is that what happens then, that they pursue them after to get their horses?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't think it radically changes the emotion of it.
It's just such an odd difference. Like
why bother?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's leading to the same direction. Like
right, which is them ending up before the Goblin King.
The Goblin King.
Who, this might not bode well for a certain dragon character that shows up later in the film, but the Goblin King is honestly my favorite character design in the whole movie. Because it's taking what they're doing with the main goblins and then cranking it up a bit. He's got a bigger mouth, more of like a toothy, tusky kind of look, like grin. He's a little grosser.
Yeah.
Do you know what it reminded me of? Did you ever read, as a child, the Teacher from the Black Lagoon books?
I read a couple of them. Yes.
Yeah, it's the whole thing where it's like some anxious kid that's imagining what their teacher's going to be like, and it's this big monster that eats people alive, and then they show up to the classroom, and it's a delightful petite woman that welcomes him. There are like 20 of these things, but there's a very specific monster design to that, and it's like the same thing for the Goblin King here, but I mean that in a good way.
Yes. I particularly love when they discover Thorin's sword and his eyes are like, what? This is the Goblin Slayer sword!
Which is always so funny to me, because that's in the story, but this guy seems to have not bothered with the whole like leader, like being a king 101, where it's like you need to inspire confidence in your men in these kind of situations, and instead he's like, we're doomed.
He's here to kill us. And also like that's been like this has been discussed in the book and in the movie quite a bit. There was a Goblin Dwarf war. Like this is not news to anybody. They should have just been like, we hate dwarves because dwarves and goblins are natural enemies. But Gandalf comes.
Gandalf pops up again, and for how rushed this film is, it's like, didn't this just happen with the trolls? It's like, okay, they get captured, Gandalf shows up, they escape.
Gandalf has to take his smoke breaks, like, and he's a shy smoker. He doesn't want to smoke in front of everyone.
He's a selfish smoker, is what this sounds like to me.
He does not want to puff paff. So I'll tell you that much. He knows how much. He saw the pipe that Bilbo has.
He's got a high tolerance. I think this Gandalf could stand to smoke a little bit more because he's kind of a meanie.
He reminds me more of Saruman than like.
But that I'm gonna burn one.
Let's burn it.
That is something that I love that Ian McKellen brought to the character. That whole like warmth and sort of grandfatherly quality to his Gandalf. That is him. The source text for Gandalf is more of a stern, old like not angry, but sort of like short-tempered, crotchety man.
I will push back a little bit that's how Gandalf the White is, but like Gandalf the Grey like still was the one bringing fireworks to Hobbiton and like
fair,
having a good time. And I mean, you can't blame him. Like, everybody wanted to kill Pippin and Merry by the
Yeah. This Gandalf is also tasked in a lot of cases with accelerating the plot.
Yes.
So that's part of it.
I think the biggest gripe that I'd give is they don't give us any indication on what Gandalf is doing. They're just like, I'd even be okay if he's just like, I have to go do wizard stuff. Like, it's just like, I've got to go. But they make it seem like it's something that's going to pop up later in the movie. He's like, there's something I must see to.
Yeah, which it leads to people like us assuming later that he's just off shooting up, getting high.
It's like, guys, trust me, this is good. It's going to be big.
It's a very unreliable Gandalf.
But you also get the sense that he's a little unreliable. Like, he does in the books leave Thorin and company at like the most inconvenient of times. He's like,
or maybe the most dramatically possible times.
It's like,
to Tolkien's credit.
We're going into Mirkwood, one of the most dangerous places in the world. Peace.
But we're not quite there yet.
No, we're not.
And I will say that John Huston as the voice of Gandalf is a pretty good pick.
Yes.
Again, not a lot of opportunity to make a character of it, but just his base quality of voice, I like it.
Yes.
He is, I mean, he's done a fair bit of acting work, and, well, he's dead now, but I actually like him a lot more as an actor, like as a screen presence than a director.
Yes.
Even though Maltese Falcon is a masterpiece, but good addition to this. And this actually means that there are two notable film directors turned actors that provide their voice talents for this film.
Let's hear.
So that's him, John Huston as Gandalf.
Yeah.
Great casting. The results are fine, but on a fundamental level, I think that was a really wise choice. The other is Otto Preminger as the Elf King. Not Elrond, the Wood Elf King.
Thandril? I don't think they say his name, but
which I get that we're not there in the our coverage yet, but that's a bit of a more interesting choice. He has a very distinct voice.
I have a sinking feeling that a lot of people that were involved, especially with this, and we'll talk about the animated Lord of the Rings as well as the Return of the King, eventually. And
Yeah.
But
also, just to be clear, we will discuss the Jackson films eventually, but we recognize that is those are some big ones, and we want to make sure that we're good and ready for those.
Yes.
So
well polished.
Yeah, I think the Hobbit movies are probably the live action Hobbit movies are probably a year or so off, and we've also, I think, unofficially declared that the Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy will be the last thing we discuss on this podcast, and that'll probably take about the rest of time.
Exactly.
That's because once we start discussing Lord of the Rings, the Jackson movies, we'd just never be able to stop.
Exactly. It will. That's how this podcast will die. We'll set the building on fire and we'll die with the podcast.
But you were saying,
but I really think that these Tolkien adaptations were very much almost like what's a lot of these Star Wars projects. Well, maybe not Star Wars projects now, but like when they started making all these extra Star Wars products, there's a lot of people that are like, I just want to be involved with Star Wars. Like, I just want my name tied to Star Wars.
Are you talking about like the Ewoks movie or
no,
otherwise?
Like more like the Mandalorian, like
oh yeah, there are so many of them now too, like Ahsoka or
Obi-Wan.
the Andor. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But like a lot of these actors, like that maybe they have really no right. Well, I shouldn't say no right, but you wouldn't see them in a Star Wars or anything like it before. But they're like, I grew up on Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I don't necessarily want to like devote all my time to Star Wars, but give me a role in it so I can like just say, hey, I was in Star Wars.
I could see that because these books from Tolkien, I think, were recognized at this point as seminal works.
Yes.
And probably understood to be impossible to make in live action.
Yes.
So, maybe there would the animated the 78 Lord of the Rings had a significantly higher budget than this film, but I could see all of the talent going into these projects feeling like this was probably going to be a definitive adaptation for the screen.
Well, and in their defense, like, it's still talked about. If you go and look at the reviews, it's still really, it's well loved. Like, if I'm pretty sure, like,
I think that this film and the animated Lord of the Rings and the Return of the King do hold a special place in the hearts of a lot of people who saw them young.
yes,
Ourselves included.
yes.
And so that's just me kind of like, does that mean that it's going to, once that generation passes on, is it gonna, are these films gonna be kind of lost to history? I could see them becoming more of a footnote than they currently are. Because I agree with you that they do come up and they are referenced, but I'm not sure that that is going to have the lasting power as, especially now that the live action films have come out and been such a hit.
For sure. And I do want to move on, and there's actually one thing I want to bring up that's still tied before we move on to the Gollum scene. But I get a sense that there's a lot of people in Gen Z that they like that retro. They're all about the retro. They like, there's a lot of them that are picking up retro music. They're picking up some of these retro shows. Like, I feel like this, if they put this out on Netflix, if they put this out on a streaming service, like almost like, I know Avatar's not exactly a good example, but Avatar was nowhere near, in my opinion, as big as it was when it came out on Netflix, because it just exploded at that point.
I don't think this has that potential.
I don't think
on a reduced degree, yes.
But I do think that there's a lot of people that are in that Gen Z and maybe even the generation afterwards that have that love for that retro feel, like want to get something that are like, oh, look at what our great grandparents watched.
yeah, and I do think that isn't anything to be ashamed of. And appeal, like if that aesthetic appeals to you, and it's definitely here. I'd say it's even more in the Return of the King,
which we'll talk about.
Yeah, that episode's coming up. But yeah, my test though that I'm imagining, because my experience with this was like, I'd seen this film several times as a child. I remember watching it. You know how when like elementary school's wrapping up, the teacher just puts on a movie.
Yeah.
Third grade, this was the movie.
Gotcha.
Great pick, Miss Nelson. Great pick. But I hadn't seen this in probably 16, 17 years.
Yeah.
And so putting it on again, it was definitely in my head like animated Hobbit, banger, let's go. And then I watched it and I was like, that was okay. So yeah. I think that's part of it too, is you have some of these films that exist in this zone have a difficult situation in that they exist in people's memory as better than they actually are. So,
yes.
So I'm worried that that's going to run out its life, where people are like, yeah, I have positive feelings about this. I watched that movie all the time when I was a kid. I'm going to put it on for my 6-year-old. And then you watch it together and you're like, interesting.
It's like, we did it. We don't need to do it again.
Yeah, that was a one-time watch.
No, I get that. But again, I mentioned...
That's so... Sorry, I actually think this is a good thing to dig into, and I have one last point.
Let's dig into it.
So I think the value is more so in viewing it as like an artifact of that time. So I think that this film at this point in time holds more worth visiting as an adult or like a like teenage on, rather than like putting this on for your kids who are a big fan of Frozen and Encanto or that kind of thing.
No, I agree. Before we get to the Gollum scene,
what you got?
Welcome to Goblin Town.
They kind of breeze over it, but it's one of the better songs.
It's my favorite song.
It's your favorite?
It was my favorite in the film.
But Bryce, the greatest adventure is what lies in store.
The greatest adventure is a close second, but Goblin Town is just so fun to me.
I like Goblin Town. I think Greatest Adventure is the standout. That's the theme song that is used throughout the film. It's folky and sticky and memorable. My number 2 pick would probably be their rendition of the Dwarf song.
That's fair. It's a banger, but I for whatever reason just Goblin Town just struck a chord in me that I was like, this is amazing. Like I love like the guttural, like low, but it's still also like oddly like cheerful. Like,
And you listen to that song on its own, and it does paint a pretty fun picture. And you're like, Goblin Town, like what's going on there? What are their politics like?
and I know that this probably doesn't make too much sense to a lot of people, but I have a feeling that just the tune is like Ramsey's theme song, my dog's theme song. Like,
He could fit in Goblin Town.
I could see him as a cop in Goblin Town.
Oh man.
But Gandalf kills the Goblin King.
He smites him, and that's the last we see of.
But then
it does the 70s animation
of the spirit like spiraling or something like that. He's like, no.
I loved it.
And then they all run, and Bilbo, for whatever reason, is riding on the back of one of the dwarves.
And he bonks his head and falls into a pit,
That he does.
which takes him down to. This is a commercial break.
It is.
They do have the commercial breaks. They're not as obvious. I mean, they're obvious, but
There's two that are pretty obvious. The rest are not as obvious.
I'm more so. They're not as abrupt. They don't like wreck the flow of things, but they're definitely here. And so after a commercial break, we find Bilbo down near in a dark cavern. There's a lake and a small island with kind of a hut on it. And I think that this is quite decidedly the best part of the movie.
It is. I love Gollum's design. I do want to point out Gollum is huge. Like, I don't know if you picked that up or not.
I see what you're saying, because he does. He's like still on Bilbo's eye line, but that's because he's super hunched over.
He's not only hunched over, he's like crouched down and like hunched over. He's on all fours, and he's still like looking, and his eyes are like the size of Bilbo's head over here.
I like the design of this as well. I said I like the Goblin King best. This would probably be my number 2.
Yeah.
He's very frog-like.
Yes.
Which is a cool swing. And especially how they incorporate that where when he's saying his own name like a Pokemon, it's kind of like a ribbit. Gollum. I liked it. And the tone going into this scene is very dark and mysterious, and it's cool.
I think it's appropriate to burn one of these at this time. But Peter Jackson's Gollum, as much as I love it, it's definitely more of a creepy, terrifying creature.
Yes, and I like this.
Yes.
And I like that they're so different.
Yes.
Which, I don't think I've said this, but it's pretty fair to say, and I'm counting this as the same one, because we're talking Jackson here. I don't think that there's a single performance in this film, this 1977 film, that isn't overshadowed by what the live action performers did in the Jackson movie.
For sure.
So just that out of the way, I really like how different these two presentations are. And this Gollum is less threatening, I'd say. Like, he is a threat and like intimidating in the size that you're talking about, but he's more like batty. He's like strung out.
Yes.
You know?
He looks like he's just a drug addict that's living underneath a bridge over here. And like, because even was like, when I will show you the way out. but if it loses, I'll eat you. And he's like, oh my.
Oh my.
I'll take that.
Did you notice the credit for Gollum in this?
I don't think so.
Because I think this is, I mean, you could argue to its actual quality, certainly the most interesting vocal performance in the film.
Yes.
It is credited to Theodore. Just Theodore.
Theodore.
Who I have come to understand was a like comedian of the time, like a very odd character who in his comedy career was referred to as Brother Theodore in the 70s.
Okay.
An immigrant with a very particular style. I wonder how much of that actually translated to this, but I respect them taking such a big swing, having someone like that provide voice talent for Gollum.
Well, I will say this, and you can disagree with me if you want, but I think you can make an argument that this section, like the whole Gollum portion in the book, is either tied or considered one of the biggest moments in the book.
It's like if I was to have somebody just read one chapter of The Hobbit, it would be Riddles in the Dark, no question.
Yes.
The actual effect of and there's a lot of similarities between the two in the text, but I think Bilbo's encounter with Gollum and his encounter with Smaug are where the book is really singing. And we'll get into it in more detail, but this one is much better represented. The Gollum encounter is much better represented in the 77 film than the other later on.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
And part of it is that the voice performance is so weird and interesting in here, and then for Smaug it's just kind of standard.
Yeah. But I mean, everybody probably has an idea of what goes on here, but before Gollum comes up to Bilbo, Bilbo finds a ring.
A ring.
Which I low-key, as a book nerd, I hate that there's intricate carvings on the ring. I don't know if you picked that up.
I didn't notice, but that's wrong.
It's so wrong. Like there's all these and it's not even Elvish. It's like little scenery decorations all across it. I'm just like,
didn't have to do that.
It looks like a wedding, and that's another thing. It looks like a wedding ring, man. It doesn't look like
a little thing.
It's a little thing. Bothered me for the moment, but
so Gollum comes out and greets Bilbo, and it's kind of a funny encounter more than like a overtly hostile one at first.
Yes.
And so they get kind of a Mexican standoff going where Bilbo's got his elvish sword. Gollum's clearly bigger, but they compromise on settling their fate through a game of riddles, which is leads to a very compelling sequence. Well, not so much a sequence in the movie as in the book, but this is part of why I like that this Gollum is kind of loopier and dumber, is because when you think about it, this whole arrangement is so absurd.
I just wish we could go back to a time when you could settle disputes with just a game of riddles.
Which there is sort of a tradition of this, like you think in The Princess Bride, the Battle of Wits that they do. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But here we're like, okay, so they're gonna do riddles until one of them can't get one, and if Bilbo gets it wrong, he's just going to let Gollum eat him?
Yeah.
Like if Gollum, like, why wouldn't Gollum just eat him if he could do that? Like, it's more reasonable to assume that Gollum would follow his word and show Bilbo the way out if he loses, because that doesn't result in his demise.
Yeah.
But like, what are we getting at here?
I mean, it's one of those things where like, and I was thinking the same thing, but I at least came to the justification that like Bilbo, like people's word, like if you swore on it, it meant more. So like Bilbo's like, okay, I'll allow you to kill me. And there's not, and again, like I know that that's not really a reasonable thing, but at the same time, it's like, okay, Gollum doesn't want to have to fight Bilbo. And what other options does Bilbo have? Like he could either fight Gollum, which, yeah, he has the sword, but who knows how long that he would do down in the deep like that.
Yeah, and that's the fun of it, is them recognizing, or at least feeling, that both of them have a better and more gentlemanly chance of besting the other with their minds than with their brawn.
Exactly. And I do love this sequence. It is very similar to the books.
Well, it's an abridged version. I think in this adaptation they do 4 riddles.
I think so.
Maybe 5. In the book there are 10, and they're all bangers.
All bangers.
So again, I would recommend anybody who wants a little taste of the literature, give that chapter a go. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Or revisit it if you already have read it.
That one too.
But eventually it gets to the point where Bilbo is struggling to think of a riddle to even ask Gollum.
So he improvises, and he comes up with a whack riddle that Gollum is not smart enough to call him out on.
Yes. And then in this adaptation, he doesn't even because in the book he's like, give me 3 chances. Like,
no, instead he's just like, well, I don't got it. I guess I got to help you out. So the riddle is, what do I have in my pocket?
Yes.
Which, in all fairness, Gollum maybe should have the context clues to figure out, but still, whack riddle, Bilbo. That's cheating. Nah, dude. Nah.
Cheating. Yes.
So Gollum goes back because he's not going to show Bilbo the way out.
No.
He's just going back to find his magic ring so that he can best him. Which, again, what was the whole point of the thing other than the contest of riddles is awesome?
You can make the argument that Gollum probably is bored as hell down there. He's alone.
Yeah, just with the fishies.
He's just with the fishies.
Specifically avoiding all the goblins with his magic ring.
Yes. And he probably doesn't get a chance to play with riddles with it. I mean, he's good at riddles. That's
surprisingly good at riddles.
Yeah, that's sort of what we come up with and get the sense of is
for all his grabbing his head like, I don't know.
Eggs.
But just in this moment, lucky Bilbo realizes the power of the ring and that it can turn him invisible.
Yes.
He puts it on. Gollum comes back, assumes that Bilbo has the ring, and then thinks he's chasing him out because he says, if Bilbo knew the way in, he knows the way out.
Which in Gollum's defense, that's a pretty reasonable.
But then what was the whole thing of riddle? It was just too cool. Whatever justification.
Yeah. And so I've the ones, because I watched this movie when I was younger, but Bilbo jumping over Gollum Mario style,
yes,
just lives rent free in my head. I will just think of it at any random time, and then just Gollum curse you.
The close up, because they do the flashing eyes, kind of similar to the Goblin King, where he's like, "We hate it forever."
Not foreshadowing anything.
No, because that's the last we see him in the movie. So that's that.
That's that. But Bilbo somehow meets up with the rest of the party. Just
yeah,
no difficulty finding him whatsoever.
And then they're like, how did you get out without having to fight through the goblins like we did? And he's like, well, I'm just an expert burglar.
And I love how Gandalf's like, well, he'll ring us with all the details.
What's your... let me try John Huston. What you're saying rings true.
He just...
wink, wink.
Yeah, Gandalf knows what's going on.
Gandalf sees all.
He sees through the lies of the Jedi. Which the goblins are still chasing after him, apparently.
Right. They take this little breather, but then the goblins are on them. They run down to the edge of a cliff. They climb up some trees. The trees get lit on fire. And then they get rescued by some eagles.
Just classic Classic Lord of the Rings always being saved by the eagles.
Yeah. And I will say at this point that it is one of my biggest frustrations with this film that for all of the nuance that is lost in the pacing of it, just that everything is go, 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 it just feels like solutions keep falling in their laps, which, in the broad strokes of the story kind of are. Like the trolls basically turn themselves to stone. Gandalf just shows up and that's enough to save them from the goblins. Bilbo just happens to find the ring, and then the eagles just happen to show up and save him here. Much less of an issue when you have the context of the greater story. Watching this film, it's kind of like, come on. Like this again.
It's almost like a DM is trying to save the party from themselves. But I also, I don't know why I low-key love this, but I love that the eagles actually talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they have a little conversation with the Lord of the Eagles, and he's like, "Now we're even, Gandalf.
You saved me when I was a little bird."
But they peace out, and I'm just not going to overthink how apparently Gandalf only had enough credit to get to Mirkwood.
Nah, he does. He hasn't got his frequent flyer miles up to the appropriate amount yet.
Complete omission of Bjorn, but in the grand scheme of things, I think that's something you can stand to cut.
He is fun though. I really enjoy him.
Bjorn's awesome.
Yeah. I am sad that they cut him, but I also understand. And as we alluded to earlier, this is where Gandalf is like, I have matters to attend to. Really alluding.
Gandalf's got to go visit the plug.
There's this dispensary over here that's actually legal. So peace out. He goes to Bjorn.
And and Thorin's like, Gandalf, dude, what are we going to do without you? And he's like, don't worry. You have the next best thing. Bilbo will take care of you. And Thorin's like, what?
And I was right on there with him.
And even Bilbo's like, what? But then Gandalf repeats himself and everybody's cool with this.
And then this is the part where Bilbo starts writing everything down.
Yeah, Bilbo takes over as narrator for a little while.
I think he does for the rest of the movie.
Maybe he does. Yeah. But he's only officially writing in the adventure log through the end of Mirkwood. But that is funny how Gandalf tasks him with keeping notes on what happens, specifically so he can point out what he did wrong later.
I was like, what? Gandalf is sort of he's the best, but he's also somewhat the worst in this.
He's kind of an ass.
But Bilbo's writing it. There's a lot of the stuff that is in the book where they climb the tree to see where they're at, and he gets the whole butterfly feel effect thing.
It's nice enough. I like how they do the animation with all the eyes in the forest. I remember that really affecting me when I was a kid. I found that very creepy. Just the unknown beyond the path is a pretty effective image. But the story is they start to they're journeying on through Mirkwood, and then as they're sleeping, it
seems out of nowhere.
They get captured
by spiders. And Bilbo is he literally wakes up and you're like, what am I doing in this? Because he's half wrapped up.
But Bilbo manages to slip away with the power of his lucky ring, which I just got to say, the ring is so much more fun when you don't know about its dark side.
That is true. When it's just a ring that can turn you invisible, this is the best.
Totally.
Dark Lord with a giant eye looking over each time I use it? What?
No concern that he's going to end up like Gollum one day. Sunshine and rainbows. He's an expert burglar now.
Bilbo smokes weed, not meth. Austin.
This Gollum, I think, is more of a heroin sword.
Yes. But again, the dwarves are useless in this situation, and Bilbo saves them all. But not only does he save, like, are they useless, but they get captured immediately after by the elves.
Yeah. Although I do think before we move on to the elf section, gotta point out that there are no female characters in this movie at all, unless you count the spiders, who have kind of a female quality to their voices. So
what are the directors trying to say here?
Yeah, if you're trying to make a Bechdel case for this one, this is your best hope at passing test number 1. I don't think so.
Oh man.
But yeah, immediately get captured by the elves, which makes me think, like, yeah, the spiders are cool, but you probably just could have cut that whole section as well.
Well, they did say that they weren't able to fight the elves because they were so weak from the spiders. But
I guess.
Still. I think at this point I just need to say, like, it's so sad because the Mirkwood portion in the book, like, it is long and it's dreary, but it still is exciting. I just didn't like anything about the Mirkwood scene in the adaptation.
Well, there's nothing between the characters in these scenes either. It's much too fast to where he's like, I don't know if I can do a auto premature. He's like, I am the Elf King. and he's like, what are you doing here? And they're like, our business is our own. He's like, okay, well then we're gonna put you in jail. And there's nothing in, like, the nuance between the relationships of the dwarves and elves, between any history that these kings of their nations would have had.
Yeah.
It's just, this is another, like, bad guy in a string of captors.
Yes. And I also low-key don't understand why they, like, Bilbo waited for weeks. Like,
I think he says that it took him weeks to find a solution.
Yeah.
And I remember this section in the book is actually really fun to me, where, like, the whole fate of the party comes down on Bilbo. So it's like a high pressure situation for him, but also just him describing, like, he's wearing the ring all the time, just tiptoeing around the Elven kingdom. Like, okay, I'm invisible, and that's an advantage, but how do I spring 13 dwarves from this situation?
Yeah.
But he eventually does come up with a solution that involves using the empty wine barrels that the elves deliver down the river.
Yes.
As a means of escape. Again, alcoholism.
Which works.
Yes.
They're able to float down the river and get to it is Dale. Or
Lake Town.
It's like, yes.
Because
Lake Town.
Dale is the city got burned by Smaug.
Yes. They get to Lake Town. And we meet Bard.
No master of the city. It's just Bard. He's running everything. And pretty much immediately Thorin introduces himself, and they're like, oh, we know you.
He literally bursts out of the barrel like, oh, I am Thorin, king under the mountain. And they're like, oh, it's the king.
Finally. And yeah, fast track. They give him provisions and send him off to the Lonely Mountain.
Yeah. And I really do think that this entire sequence just went so quick. Like, and again, that's sort of been like the message of the movie, but
this one, there's nothing here. It's obligatory, because where, like, Smaug later comes out and it's Bard that has to slay him. So they have to establish this, but they are blazing through it and not establishing anything more than the bare facts of the situation.
Yes. And they do the whole thing where the sunlight reveals the keyhole, and
they get into the mountain, but all the dwarves are too scared. So Bilbo has to be the one to go in and creep around.
Which they could have just done, like, because I'm pretty sure it is in the book that, like, the reason they picked out Bilbo is because Smaug knows the smell of dwarves, right? Like, that's
a big part of it. I mean, he is the burglar. And again, each of the dwarves have more explicit roles in the book.
Well, they picked him to be the burglar specifically because he was a hobbit, not a dwarf.
Yes.
Like, and they could have done that. I don't know if they just wanted to be like, oh yeah, the dwarves are cowards, but
we're moving too fast. Don't think about it. They do make a comment of how bad the smell is, though, the dragon smell, which
Yeah.
I appreciated that little bit of flavor.
I'm saving my thoughts on that for later.
Yes, I'm sure that'll come up in our discussion of Smaug at the end of this episode of Big Flying Lizards.
Yeah. But speaking of Smaug,
Right. So before too long, Bilbo happens upon the dragon Smaug sleeping on his hoard.
and Smaug does wake up, and I low-key love how his eyes have like the spotlights.
Oh, you liked the beams?
I low-key liked it.
I got tired of that so quick. I was not a fan of that creative choice where they have, yes, it is critical to understand where Smaug's gaze is because he's looking for Bilbo,
Yes.
but they maintain it through the entire sequence, more or less. And I think it kind of ruins the look of it, even though, and we'll get into it later, the character design for Smaug is so odd.
It's whack.
Yeah, he's a cat dragon. Why did they make Smaug a cat dragon?
I have thoughts. I will save them for the end. But I think you're going to be surprised with my take, but not surprised with my take. I'll just say that. But
yeah, his character design is in fair continuity with the other monsters we see
yes.
in these films, but I'm not really a fan. But we'll get into the nitty-gritty on that later.
Yeah.
They have a conversation, Bilbo and Smaug, because Smaug can't find him because
the ring.
The ring, yeah. And it's some banger dialogue from Tolkien here. We're moving a bit too fast, and I don't necessarily love the voice performance.
No, it's pretty average. It's we have enough to burn. It's not Benedict Cumberbatch.
Absolutely not.
Like,
No.
Benedict Cumberbatch, like, easily my favorite part of the three movies.
There's an argument there. I think his, like, you see the footage of him doing the mocap, that's a little insane. But the voice that he brought to it might be my favorite work from him, even though he was amazing in Power of the Dog.
He just sold it so well, and I do think he's a little bit off his rocker. That's just my assumption.
Most definitely.
But it makes for a great dragon voice. It's big dragon energy.
But in the 77 film, by the way, that's 10 references, so we better be careful moving forward.
Fair.
Don't want the podcast to end prematurely. What happens in this scene in the 77 version is Bilbo kind of teases Smaug. I like that he plays to his vanity.
Yes.
And he's like, I want to look upon the greatest creature that ever ever considered. That's what our intro is. But that's not what he says in the movie. He's just like the great dragon. I want to look upon you, and so we're getting some sort of braggadocio from Smaug.
Yes.
And the big takeaway is that Bilbo convinces him to reveal his stomach and sees there's a little chink in his underbelly where someone might be able to land a critical blow. And he says this out loud for some reason.
Well, I don't think they really do a great job of like inner monologues in this movie.
No. And that's fine. But it's just funny in the context of the scene because he's like, "Oh, you fool, you've got a chink in your armor." And then Smaug's like, "What did you say?
How dare you?"
Is this another riddle?"
And it just moves so fast to me that like it just feels so rushed at this point. Like,
It doesn't do the source material justice.
no,
Not at all.
because Smaug eventually leaves.
Yes. And so Bilbo also runs out.
With a cup.
He got a cup, you know. He got some loot to show off.
Not the Arkenstone.
No, the Arkenstone is totally omitted from the film. And I do think we lose something in that, especially in the relationship with Bilbo and Thorin.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I would add in if I had a little more runtime to work with. But
Yes.
it is what it is.
And Smaug starts wreaking havoc.
Yeah, he heads over to Lake Town. Luckily, Bilbo talks to a little bird, and he's like, "Oh, you're here. That's great. You're a smart bird, I can tell. And you know about Smaug's weakness. Go tell Bard. He's the only one who can defeat the dragon."
Naturally.
Yeah, all of this makes total sense. And then, so the bird does, and then he goes and tells Bard, and then Bard is like, "Oh, great, I'll use my black arrow." And then he kills the dragon.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. There's some interesting animation with the dragon that we'll dig into later.
Yeah,
but
the death scene is, I think, is cool, but again, it's so rushed. And speaking of rushed, all the dwarves start like playing in the gold, like, "Aha, it's ours, yay, ha!"
right. So they in this case they're illustrating more that the madness that falls upon Thorin, and to a lesser extent the rest of the dwarves, is more just from the treasure hoard overall rather than pursuit of the Arkenstone specifically.
Which, to be fair, is not terribly far. I think if you're trying to not give like a supernatural, like, it's just greed. Like, I know the Arkenstone is like supposed to represent greed, but it's just greed.
It works.
It works.
But we fast forward, it's been about a week of them doing this. And then Bilbo's like, "We should leave." And they all go for it for some reason. And right as they're exiting, Bard is there like, "Oh, hello." And they notice that there are two armies approaching.
"I am King Bard now." And there's Bard, and then there's the Elf King. And they're like, "We want treasure too. There was treasure stolen from us. Give us the treasure or we will attack."
And if we were doing fit picks, which we're not in this case, I think I'd give mine to the Elf King for a very odd and particular battle get up. It's very leafy, but I kind of liked where they went with it.
It was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
But I just love they don't know like the dwarf army is coming. They're like, "We'll fight you."
Well, nobody should know the dwarf army. Like, why do the dwarves show up?
Do we ever even really see the dwarf army?
No, I don't think well, maybe we do in like a shot, but we don't see any fighting on their end.
No, like we see the elf army, we see the human army, we see the goblin army, and then we see, and again, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but we see the eagle army, but I don't think we ever see like the dwarves.
It doesn't matter. But the thing that bothers me is, and this is a little later because, okay, to summarize, those armies, the elves and the men are showing up, and then the goblins are on the way.
Yes.
And then like the Elf King is like, "We want some treasure," and Bard's like, "We should probably get some treasure too. Like, we killed the dragon."
All fair arguments.
Yes, and Thorin is like, "No deal, no conversation," even though Bilbo is like, "There is definitely enough money to go around here." Thorin's greed gets the better of him, and all of them are later suiting up for war. And Bilbo's like, "Wait, so you 13 are going to take on these armies?" And they're like, "Well, Bilbo, you just don't understand war." And then they look out, and what do you know, but his cousin Dane has shown up with the dwarf army, which in the book they send a bird to the dwarves to enlist this, to encourage them to come and assist.
Yeah.
They don't do that in the movie. The dwarves just show up.
It's almost like the bat signal went out when the dragon died.
It's fine.
And so they all meet out in the field to fight, and they're charging, and then Gandalf just appears. He's like, "May the king of the men and the elves and the dwarves come here." And then they start talking. And Gandalf's like, "There's a goblin host coming here. They're going to kill all of you." And all of a sudden, Thorin's like, "My dear friend, the Elf King,
old buddy, old pal,
we must unite as allies and friends for our close and fondness." Like, Well, like, it was funny, but it was also just like, where on earth did this come from?
And because Bilbo doesn't, quote unquote, understand war, he ducks out.
He goes and sits on a log and just is sitting there writing. Yes.
Yeah, he doesn't get knocked out like he does in the book.
He says he gets knocked out.
But that's the thing is then that's his excuse that he uses later.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
For not participating in the fighting. They, much like the recently released as of this recording, Furiosa, they fast track what probably looks like the most exciting action sequence of the film right there at the end. We get just a couple montage images of it, and then that wraps up. Old Bomber is staggering toward Bilbo at the end. He's like, "We won!" And then Bomber dies for some reason. Again, it's a children's film. Why are you adding more deaths?
Yeah, they only 3 die in the book. Like 5, it's either 5 or 7. I can't remember, but
maybe they're just like, well, we haven't built up these characters enough, so nobody's going to care if 1 or 2 dies. But if most of them die, maybe that'll have an actual impact.
Yes. And
take us home, Bryce.
Thorin's on his deathbed, and he's like, "Bilbo, you were right. I'm sorry, dear friend." And then he dies.
And then Bilbo and Gandalf journey home.
And Gandalf, like, pretty much like, "Yeah, I know you have the ring."
Yeah. And then they do like a little tease at the end there that this is only the beginning of this story. Mm-hmm. Even though Bilbo might feel that he has completed his greatest adventure.
Yes. And movie ends.
That's the film. 77 minutes. Very, very tight.
Yes.
Overly tight, in my opinion.
They could have added a few more minutes.
You want to do final thoughts?
Final thoughts. It's fun. It has a lot of nostalgia for me. We'll talk a little bit more about Smaug, but I have my disagreements and disappointments about that. But overall, I think they did a pretty good job taking a lot of the story from The Hobbit and putting it into an adaptation that's worth watching. I would have, if I had, they should have added at least like 20 to 30 minutes.
I think that could have done wonders, because that is my main issue, is just that it's so breakneck.
Yes.
Where I do admire on some level that this is a more accurate representation of Tolkien's tone.
Yes.
It has sort of that genteel, like more calm approach to its adventure, which is neat to see represented. But then I feel like all of that is negated by how much they have to cover in so little time. And then you don't actually end up getting any of these nuances that add so much texture to the story.
Yes.
I also think the animation can be a little spotty, and I don't love a lot of the character design. We didn't discuss the design of Bilbo's character, which isn't like the most appealing protagonist design.
It's not the most appealing, but I think it is quite fitting for Bilbo as a character. If I would, again, this would have taken more money, but if I had more, I would have encouraged them to make him look rougher throughout the film. Like, he goes into there, he's all blurry-eyed, happy, nice clothes. I would have his hair get a little longer. I'd have him look like he's covered in dirt more. I'd have his clothes look more
tattered, yeah.
So when he's coming back, he almost looks like Strider coming back.
Do you know what he reads to me like? He's like an ugly Hummel. And also they really go for it with the hairy feet.
Yes.
He is a straight up wolf man down there.
Well, with this animation style, I feel like you almost have to.
Yeah, it's one or the other. You can have Wolfman status or bald feet.
Yes. But overall, it's fun. I enjoy it.
It's very watchable. Also, I on the music, we've already kind of discussed. I think other than those 3 that I mentioned before, the rest is pretty forgettable.
Yeah, they all very much blend together. But those 3, though, are just so good, though.
I'm not going to go that far. It's pretty good. The greatest adventure is the one from this movie that has stuck with me through the years.
Fair.
But yeah, overall, I don't I don't necessarily disagree with the attempt. I think that there's
Yeah.
some worthwhile stuff here. Like, it makes sense to try and depict this through animation, where especially at the time it would have been such a tall order to represent all these like fantastic creatures and like magic elements in anything but an animated medium. It also kind of makes sense as a like a children's program. You're like, okay, there are songs baked into this seminal text already that we can adapt, and it'll be a fun adventure for the whole family.
Yeah.
I don't think it succeeds on every level, but it is not necessarily a disaster.
I can stamp my stamp of approval on that. But speaking of total disasters,
Let's talk about Smaug.
let's talk about Smaug. I almost want us just to dive right into our grading system. That way I can really explain what
Let's get into it. Let's make this a reasonable runtime episode to match our subject matter today. Am I going first, or is that you?
I'm good if you want me to.
I think it's you that gives the grade first
Okay.
each time on this. So let's talk about the design.
Design, I give it a 2.
A 2.
It's a 2 for me. And it's gonna be ironic because
2 out of 10. That translates to very bad.
it's just not scary. Like, Smaug is supposed to look evil. Smaug is supposed to look scary, intimidating. It looks just like a house cat that's over here.
Why the cat?
Yeah.
I don't know where they're getting this from.
I have more to explain on that, but it's more for the X factor. But
Okay.
but I do not like the look. I even prefer like the cover of Tolkien's books, like the long snout dragon that looks goofy, essentially. Like, they could have done that, but no.
I think you lose a lot when you're sacrificing the reptilian aspect.
Yes.
I think you lose the intimidation. I think you lose a lot of the cool factor.
Well, and with dragons, like, the reptilian factor gives it the heart, like reptiles are
Cold-blooded.
Yeah, cold-blooded, cold-hearted, like just killing machines. With a cat, you just dangle a little feather over here to distract it.
Yeah, best case scenario, we're talking about a lion, which is a totally different vibe than what this character is presented to be in not just the source material, but all other mentions throughout this film.
Yes.
I gave it a 2 as well. So I think we agree. The conception of it, it's like, okay, we're going to do a cat dragon, and he's going to be all hairy on the back, and he's going to have kind of these long, like, cat fang teeth. I think that could have been something. I think the actual design that we ended up with is indeed very bad.
Yes. I agree.
Now, how did you feel about the actual special effects, the way that the design was then implemented in the film?
I think you're going to disagree, but with what they did and what they have and everything else in between.
Yeah, this is taking the design as a given.
Yes. I don't think it's as bad as the actual design. I gave it a 4. Still not like overly impressed, but better than what they wrote on paper, if that makes sense.
Fair. And this is more speaking to the quality of the animation in this film overall, I believe, which I think is passable. We spoke on it in our earlier discussion, so I don't feel the need to dig in more, but I think that the animation that we see displayed in the character of Smaug is in line with the generally passable animation throughout the film. I also gave it a 4. Now, the character, I feel like if he's going to get points anywhere, it's got to be in character, right?
See, I agree, but going back to what you're saying, the voice actor just, like, I feel like that's a big, if you have a dragon have a voice, they need to have a dragon voice. And that just took a lot out of it.
It's not bad.
It's not bad. I gave it a 5. So, I mean, it's the highest grade I've given yet, but it's still like meh. Like, you could have, anyone can grumble their voice. They're voice actors. Like,
Yeah, they just do a little bass boost and a little reverb, and that's kind of the extent of it.
Yeah, they didn't do any of that though. Like, it's literally just Fred and the.
Now, I'm along your lines as well. The thing I run up against is that the source material here is so solid.
Yes.
See, so the lines that he's saying, the personality that is baked into this is so strong. Truly, and there's a lot of stuff we haven't got to yet, but to me, this character, as written in the book, is the premier dragon character in all of media.
Yes.
The personality that comes through in his like his vanity, the way that he's kind of cat and mouse, pun most definitely intended, with Bilbo there. Just how sinister he is.
Yes.
It's next level. It's in a league of its own. We don't get a lot of that in this film, so I'm also giving it a 5. But I'm just saying, like, the baseline is so high that even with all of those knocks against it, just the character as written, he's a speaking dragon, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
That translates to a 5 for me, which I'm thinking it's okay. He's an okay character.
Yeah.
But this I really want to hear, and I think I have a range in mind, but I'm curious to hear what you would rate this film out of 10. Which is a factor in the overall score for the dragon.
I know that we don't do points, like,
Try not to.
but I really just have to give it a 4.5.
A 4.5,
Like,
somewhere between mediocre and okay.
Yeah, like it's fun, but it's just so fast, it's so quick, and it just doesn't give us a chance to really like get a bite out of it, and that just I'm a lore guy. I want my lore, and
Yeah, the lore is more or less relegated to the like the backgrounds
yes,
of each scene, where you're like, okay, well, I can kind of getting a sense of the world because they have to portray all of it, but there's just not a lot of substance here.
yeah,
I'm a little more negative on it than you, and I think I've outlined that for the most part. It's just too quick, and the worthwhile stuff here doesn't necessarily outshine it to the point where I feel comfortable like recommending this film, especially if you're not already so invested in Tolkien or dragon films.
for sure.
I'm going with just a straight 4.
Okay, I think that's justified. I don't see anything wrong with that.
But on the X Factor.
The X Factor is actually my highest score. Ironically, I gave it a 6.
A 6 out of 10.
And my justification is I really get the sense that dragon smell is a big thing. And I really love that they made such an emphasis on dragon smell, because I'm sure it's like the smell of burnt bodies and like, and I'm sure just the rank stank of that. And also where dragons like hardly ever leave their lair, probably a lot of access. So, I mean, like, I really love that they made an emphasis on the smell. And to go back to the cat, I do not like the cat design, but in a lot of literature and a lot of media, dragons have almost like cat-like energy. Like when they're describing how they hunt and how they react, they have like cat hunting.
I sort of hear what you're talking, and it's that whole like curiosity,
yes,
that they have, or like you could see, like, it's not that much of a stretch. I'm a cat person. I have a cat. It's not that much of a stretch to imagine him like lounging out on a hoard of gold.
Yes.
And just finding that so satisfying.
No, I genuinely think that cats are very similar. Like, cats are more closer to dragons, in my opinion, than any reptile that that we know of that are to dragons. Just because so I appreciate that they almost like, okay, we're going to full send it, make it so it is almost like a cat dragon, because dragons are so like cats. So even though I don't like the design of it, I don't like what they do, I appreciate like them just saying, okay, we're full sending it. We're going on with this aspect. And it is very unique. We don't ever really see cat dragons.
I'm kind of hoping this is the last one. But I'm giving it credit for more or less the same things in this category, where it's a different approach.
Yes.
It's an idea, probably a bad idea,
Yes.
but it's not something that we're likely to catch in other dragon depictions.
And they're original with the idea.
Yeah. Now, the execution looks wonky and weird. We didn't even mention that Smaug is, because he has like the wyvern wings, because he has like little claws at the end of his wings, but then he has the two sets of legs. So I don't know what that makes him. It's kind of an odd thing to take in the macro view. But
True.
So he's unusual, which is what I think we're trying to reward in this X Factor category. All that said, I'm still giving him a 5.
Fair.
Which brings Smaug, as represented in the 1977 Hobbit film, a total score of 4.15 out of 10.
Is that our lowest so far?
Give me a second, and I will plug that into the master list here.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first, folks.
You heard it here first.
You heard it. But I think they really missed. But
It's the dragon is not the strongest aspect of the film. Like, what is worth visiting this film over is the other scenes, the riddles in the dark.
Yes.
It's some of the more memorable songs.
Welcome to Goblin Town.
Right. Okay, pulling up the Dragon Grades Master Doc, and that is revealing to me that indeed Smaug is the lowest score that we have given as of this recording.
1977 Smaug.
Yes. And that's a promise that one day we will get around to covering the Jackson films. And I feel comfortable saying that that dragon will probably rank a little higher. And I would like everybody to recognize that brings our total references to the Jackson films to 11.
Yeah. Well, I think we did it.
Right. I think that's good to wrap up, unless you have any further thoughts.
No, I think that's good. What should we ask the audience, Dawson?
What I want to know today is, I'm bookending it. I want to know everybody's favorite fantasy novel of all time. Is it The Hobbit? Are you with me? Is it something more contemporary, like the Sandersons, the Inheritance Cycle? Let us know in the comments below.
Is it Fablehaven?
Fablehaven. Hey, there's a lot of dragons in that fourth one.
There's the whole sequel series.
Oh, yeah, Dragon Watch. Yeah, I haven't checked out any of that.
It's a complete dragon. But thanks for listening in. We'll be back next week with a whole new podcast, a whole new movie. And
yeah, I mean, it's either going to be, I think, the animated Lord of the Rings or the animated Return of the King. But we're still figuring it out.
yeah, well, something there. But
More Tolkien on the way.
more Tolkien on the way. But thanks, guys. Take it easy.
See you next time.
That's all for this week's Dragon Lore. Takes cold and hot, spread shore to shore. Enjoyed yourself? Please join the squad. Follow on social media at BigLizPod. And one quick reminder before you go, to rate, review, and share the show. Thank you for listening. It means a lot. See you next week, same time, same spot.